everyone. I'm here today with my fiance, Sonny Puzikas.
Hello.
Today we're going to be talking about an event that we attended. We attended the Louder with Crowder live event at SMU, and it was a lot of fun. So we just wanted to give our thoughts on the event. So first of all, I've been watching Steven Crowder's videos for a while. Sonny hasn't seen a lot from him, so what was your impression from?
Well, from a little bit that I've seen of Crowder was that he's like a good answer to liberal comedians out there. Mm-hmm. And not being liberal, generally speaking, while his jokes are just as they bite just as well, but behind each joke there is some kind of substance, unlike many label trolling liberal comedians. So it was definitely entertaining. It was definitely fun to see the butthurt coming out, and to kind of try to feel the overall feeling of at which point he pushed buttons a little bit harder, and maybe, just maybe, some people would get kind of awkwardly uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was very interesting to observe the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as far as, well, first of all, we wore these shirts to the event.
If you cannot read, mine says it's okay to be white.
He got a lot of attention for that one. A lot of people liked it, and you got some dirty looks from some of the protesters.
I got some looks from the protesters outside, which was funny because later we found out that there were quite a few professors, SMU professors. I don't know, they probably had, what was it, maybe 50 people protesting?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot. When we arrived, there was a small group. They were holding a few signs, but no one was being super aggressive or...
And SMU has policy of you could not bring weapons, so we had to leave our firearms going in there, but I figured, it said firearms, so I'll bring the knife. And they had some other tools too, but anyway, as we walked up to they had metal detectors and scanning each person and all that, so I couldn't bring the knife in because I asked the security personnel there. So I had to run back to the car after Megan walked back in, and as I'm walking by this group of protesters, they started reading my shirt saying, it's okay to be white, and this one middle-aged lady kind of raises the little thing that says, immigrants made this country great. And
assuming that you're not
I kind of nodded my head. I'm like, I know, I'm one of those immigrants that made this country great. So yeah, it was kind of fun.
And then, if you can't read mine says pro-choice.
And it shows two separate bolts, one for Kalashnikov AK rifles and the other one is for AR-15 rifles. So, pro-choice. Choose your weapon. This
probably went over the protesters' head, but for the other attendees, they knew what this was. So... So yeah, we weren't exactly expecting a huge, anything super dramatic with the protesters like you would expect at a Milo event. The security, there was a lot of security there. We didn't have any problems with aggression from protesters. Well, first I'll say I loved Steven Crowder's entrance into the event. I'll go ahead and play the clip.
He's here, Bumpy. Performance is the instrument of your life.
those of you who don't know, I used to cosplay. And one of my favorite costumes was Bane. So...
Lady Bane.
Steven Crowder does really good voice impersonations. His Bernie Sanders impersonation is really good.
That alone is worth it. I mean, to hear him pretend to be Bernie Sanders and Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, and Ben Shapiro.
Ben
was
Shapiro
super
and Bernie
funny.
Sanders. That's it's just priceless. That alone is worth the admission, which was free.
Yeah, admission was free, so that was really cool. So yeah, the first 5 minutes, I think he was dishing out some of his harsher jokes, and there were two guys
Three guys sitting behind us.
Yeah, three guys sitting behind us.
All white.
All white, yeah. You know, white progressive men. Surprise. They jumped over the little wall, the little barrier to get to the seats, and they're being all dramatic, like, oh, look, we're hopping the wall. Like, expecting to trigger people, expecting that we're all blind Trump worshipers or something like that, right? So we're like, okay, these guys are going to be...
Yeah, they got butthurt within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, within the first 5 minutes, they tried to be all sarcastic, be like, oh, this guy is funny, and then they got mad and they left. So, yeah, that was...
I was kind of hoping for a little bit more drama, like in my own evil ways, but it didn't happen, so everything went peacefully, which, again, I have to give credit. Protesters were civil.
Yeah, they were
Protesters were civil. On the other hand, that part of Dallas, as I explained to you, this is being a University Park and Highland Park. Those of you who know these areas, this is the truly big money areas, and cops there don't mess around. And they had pretty significant presence too.
Mm-hmm. So there's, I guess, an argument to be made, whether they were civil because they really are civil, or if they kind of had to because there was a strong police and security presence and they were outnumbered.
Plus they were outnumbered 50-1 at least.
I think one of the biggest points that he makes throughout the entire show, and he repeated this with multiple examples, was that just because you're offended doesn't mean you are right. And the act of rushing to give someone the moral high ground just because they're offended has some serious consequences. It actually creates victims where there were none to begin with. So if someone gets offended, then they call for that person to be punished. Later, when all the evidence comes out, you find out that the person that offended this other person was not guilty of doing what they're being punished for. But because you gave someone the moral high ground for being offended, it then created victims because people were then punished.
People lost jobs, people lost careers, people, those were not just, inconveniences and things like that created, so you pronounce yourself to be a victim, and because the way media is, the way social media is, everybody jumps, not everybody, but significant amount of loudmouths jump to defend and fight for your offended cause and demand punishment for the offending party, and that creates true victims that suffer, in immeasurable ways.
And it was a very important point to make because, as much as we like to joke about people being snowflakes, it's a serious issue when they actually, they're being offended creates victims. And, Steven Crowder is a funny guy, but he does a pretty good job of being serious when he needs to, when there's actually a point to be made. And if you're not free to make fun of something, the whole definition of having an opinion, as he points out, is someone is going to disagree with it. Because it's an opinion, other people can have different opinions. So by definition, someone's going to disagree with it. So,
Yeah, as he was pointing out, disagreeing somehow has morphed into offended, and offended somehow automatically has morphed into you need to be protected minority because someone's opinion offended you, and actually we saw a very funny little poster, little protester sign that said hate is not funny. That alone, when you think about the word hate, who has been given an absolute, undisputable right to quantify and determine what is hate, more specifically, what is hate speech? That term alone is the very, very big first step towards fascism, which these people claim to be against. You announce the hate speech, you proclaim someone saying that, that if you speak up against this group or about that group, that's hate speech. Next thing you know, everybody would, media, legislator jumps to your side. They basically create a protected group out of that offended minority. Next thing you know, people being punished for expressing their views. How can we claim freedom of speech? If there is hate speech, there is no freedom of speech. It is that simple. People say, but how can we, allow Nazis to speak? Of course we should. Of course we should. Let those pricks make fools of themselves openly, okay, without restrictions, and people that have half the brain and IQ above 70 will see what it's about. But when you start down that slippery slope of, like, this hate speech has to be prevented because it's going to trigger someone to do something. Okay, if it does, there will be consequences. It's like, again, this creation of a hospital clean environment where no one says the F-bomb, no one says the N-word, no one says that. What's next? What's next? I mean, the white person cannot have hair that looks like black person's hair. What's next? I cannot wear the t-shirt that says it's okay to be white because it's offensive to somebody.
yeah, the real irony, why I found that sign to be particularly funny, is that the attendees in general, conservatives and libertarians, they are the most persecuted group right now politically. They are, and so for them, there's a lot more hate being dished out on conservatives and libertarians. Yet the whole premise of that sign was that conservatives are hateful. Just the whole premise of simply, you disagree with me, so you're hateful, is, I found it funny.
It is funny. So I think hate is funny.
Hate is funny.
Hate is funny, okay? That's all we got for you.
They made it funny. Yeah. So, yeah, and Crowder had a good Q&A at the end of his live event. What I really liked was that there's a long line of people that wanted to ask him questions, but he specifically wanted people who disagreed with him to get to the front of the line. And for those of you that don't know, or you probably do know of Steven Crowder because of this series, he does a Change My Mind series, where he breaks from his comedian side, and he's very serious and respectful, and he goes on college campuses and he has these discussions.
He makes a statement basically saying, that, let's say, feminism is
blank, change my mind. And he has these really civil discussions, and in the event he talked about the Socratic method, where instead of it really being a debate, what he does when someone gives their opinion, he'll ask them a question back in a way that makes them rationalize their position. And a lot of times this will make people, instead of get defensive, well, some of them will get...
And project it outwards. They kind of have to look back.
It forces them to go inward and really think about why they believe what they do. And...
So it's kind of like if you make a statement that you're a Nazi, rationalize it. How am I a Nazi? You know what I mean? Labels are easy. And And I think that was one of the big things, takeaways of a lot of what he's talking about. One was obviously just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right. And another one is just this mindless labeling of people just because you disagree with them. You almost dehumanize them by throwing labels. You're a fascist, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a bigot, you're this and that, and that somehow makes your life, your freedoms are less worthy just because you have those labels stuck to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, but by the way, Steven Crowder, if you ever watch this, okay, make a sign that says, Walter is best pistol, change my mind. I'll do it. Trust me, you'll lose that one. Glock all the way, baby.
A Glock girl and a Lionheart. I would actually debate him on that one, about the Lionheart.
He would probably beat you on that one.
You think he would?
Yeah, because Lionheart doesn't have like a track record. Lionheart doesn't have proven reliability, like truly it went through this and this and that.
They're too new of a company
and
to have a long track record.
And too rare.
Too rare to have a long track record, yeah.
Glock, on the other hand, millions of users, millions of owners, hundreds of thousands of cases of using it.
Well, then I don't know if he would win. There would just be insufficient evidence.
Insufficient evidence. Okay, fine.
So.
But Glock, Mr. Crowder, I got you.
So yeah, one of my favorite questions and responses from him, there was a black guy that
he was from Arlington, UT, right? Yeah.
Arlington, UT. Yeah, he's going to law school, and he grew up in a small town in Texas.
Killeen, Texas.
Yeah. And so he asked him how to handle other people when they expect him to have certain political opinions.
Progressive. Due to him being black.
Yeah. They think he should have progressive opinions for being black because he should have some sort of shared experiences with other black people. And I thought Steven Crowder's advice to him was actually really good advice. And you can tell because Steven Crowder's had a lot of experiences with progressives telling him what he should think, right? So he told him to use the Socratic method in the way and ask them back, why should I think the way other black people think? Why should I think that way?
Why should he think like a black guy from inner Detroit who's the member of Crips? He gave specific things, and that's the thing. It's I think it's such a clear distinction of the whole thing throwing people into this collective. Whether it's your skin color or area of the country you come from, you should think like that. Individualism is almost like a disease, like a cancer, to be shunned, to be,
yeah.
You cannot have individual opinion. You have to go, follow the party line. And I have experience with that, party lines, communism, like firsthand.
Firsthand experience.
It doesn't work.
So yeah, and growing up in a small town in Texas, he's not going to have the same experiences as a black kid growing up in Detroit and then joining a gang. He doesn't have those shared experiences. So progressives, as much as they hate racism, they're the most racist group of people I've ever met. They like to assume that your opinions are this or that you have these experiences based on your skin color.
They assign it. They basically assign attributes based on race, based on gender. They assign, if you're a black woman, you are weak. Your life is bad. They're basically telling you that you are, down there. Of course, if you're a white, straight male, that, Lucifer is your name. That's just what it is. We know that. And it's okay to be white.
And you know that because a statement as harmless as it's okay to be white, some of the expressions from some of the workers there,
they were priceless. They would look, but maybe my chiseled face or something else in my eyes told them not to say anything, or maybe just a policy,
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, but It's funny how simple statement that, you know, to quote, what's her name? Popular pop singer. The one that was singing I Was Born This Way.
Oh, Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga. I was born this way, okay? I was born white. And it's okay to be like that, you know? But somehow some people get triggered, you know? It's inconceivable. It's almost inconceivable. But hey, nothing surprises me anymore, really.
As far as the atmosphere and the other attendees there, I was actually really impressed. It felt like there was a healthy sense of objectivity, and I usually criticize patriotism because there's a lot of unhealthy patriotism out there, but there's actually some healthy patriotism. And if you don't know Steven Crowder very well, he's very objective when it comes to Trump. He said that, yeah, he thinks Trump has done more good than bad, but
he has done bad.
But he encourages people to be very upfront and be very harsh when he messes up. And he, on his show, he'll openly criticize Trump when he does wrong, and he'll praise him when he does well. And a lot of people like to assume if you're anywhere right of Bernie Sanders, then you'll love everything Trump does somehow. And
I think that's where people actually, you know, the ones that claim to be patriots, that's where they put ideology above the patriotism. Mm-hmm. And that's BS, you know, because patriotism is that, you know, it's a tough love. You know, you love you love what you are, you love what your country should be about, but when it's not, you know, living up to the promise of what it should be about or whatnot, you talk about it harshly. You know, that's what patriots do, because this is our home, and we try to make it better, right? So it's kind of like repairs are needed, you know, and you talk about it, not just go like, no, this leaking ceiling is okay, it's gonna be fine, right? Until the freaking ceiling collapses on top of you. No, you talk about it, you take measures. You know, it's not about ideology. Shouldn't be.
So after the Q&A, there was a exclusive mug club event afterwards. Sonny and I were planning on attending it, but we were very under the weather. We were both feeling
not good.
Yeah, very sick. And there was a long line of people. It was actually cool to see everyone, a bunch of people, you know, with their Louder with Crowder
coffee mugs.
You know, I just had my proof, you know, my receipt. I haven't receipt. I joined recently. So I just had the receipt on my phone, but we decided to leave because it was going to take such a long time to get up there. And
lo and behold, we walked out of the building, and darkness has scattered all the protesters.
Yeah. None
of them were there. So it was an eventful walk back to the car. And we went back home, and we had emergency to feel better. That was our after party.
Yep, that was our after party. So yeah, I would highly encourage, I'll post a link down below to Louder with Crowder, Steven Crowder's YouTube channel, and CRTV if you want to subscribe through them. They have like an annual fee. They have a bunch of other conservative libertarian political commentators that you can follow there if you want to support them. And you can also find they've posted the full live video on the website too if you want to watch the full thing that we saw. So thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.